Alright, welcome to this screencast on the digestive system. We'll try and keep this one short as we're just sort of covering the first few introductory slides that we skipped over. So just in general, one of the things you want to keep in mind about the reproductive system is that there are a number of different mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors throughout your GI tract that can keep tabs on where your food is, by which part of your GI tract is stretched out, and then also it can monitor the digestion and absorption state by monitoring things like osmolarity, or monitoring whether or not there's amino acids or other chemicals present. So your GI tract itself can keep track of digestion as it goes. So you also want to be aware of what are referred to as intrinsic regulatory mechanisms, and in a couple of slides you are going to see some extrinsic regulatory mechanisms. The first intrinsic regulatory mechanism you want to be aware of are what are called short reflexes. So you have neurons that run from one part of your digestive tract to another. This is referred to as your enteric digestive system, or as the slide says here, gut-brain. So these neurons allow for different parts of your digestive tract to coordinate contractions so that, let's say, when the small intestine is emptying out, the large intestine is making room for it. And you also have a number of different hormones which operate sort of in short range just within the digestive tract so that, again, one part of your GI tract can communicate with another. So those are all, as it says right here, short reflexes within the digestive tract coordinating secretions and contractions. Long reflexes are part of your, I should say, extrinsic controls. These involve the central nervous system, so it's a longer pathway. You're going from, instead of from one part of the gut to another part of the gut, you're going from the gut to the brain, or from the brain to the gut. And you also just want to be aware that your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system have impacts on your digestion, but we don't go into too much detail on that. Alright, so then you have just the basics of the GI tract, or the basic tissue layers that you find in any region of your GI tract. It says in the next 3 slides what you find in the mucosa, the submucosa, and the Muscularis externa. I'll just point those things out on this slide here, and just be able to match the tissue with the GI tract layer, so that if we're talking about the mucosa, you know that that is epithelium plus lamina propria, which is connective tissue, and then this muscular layer. With the submucosa, you want to know that this is primarily areolar connective tissue, and it's where you're going to find any specialized glands in that particular tissue, where you might find lymphatic tissue, and then blood vessels and neurons all run through the submucosa. And then the Muscularis externa, you just want to know, is your longitudinal and circular layers, plus any specialized parts of the GI tract that have sphincters, like the pyloric sphincter or the ileocecal valve. That muscle tissue is all in the Muscularis externa. So the Muscularis externa can be used also for these 2 processes right here. So the first is called peristalsis, and this you just need to know is how food moves through the digestive system. I won't ask questions about the definitions down here, but know that peristalsis is what pushes food or feces through any part of the digestive tract. Segmentation is different, and that's used to mix food. So if you look, this part here gets pushed down there, and this part here gets pushed up there. So this food here gets mixed together, and then these 2 things get mixed back together. So you're mushing food forward and back to help it all mix together better. The next thing you want to know is just the peritoneum, the different parts of it, and the peritoneal cavity. So that's all on this slide here. So the peritoneum is the serous membrane that lines your abdominal cavity. The parietal layer of the peritoneum lines the back wall and the front wall of your abdominal cavity, and then the visceral layer of the peritoneum is what lines the surface of all of your digestive organs, so stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver, all of that. Then there's also this specialized part of the peritoneum called the mesentery, which is on the next slide there. And mesenteries is just, as it shows here, this sort of double layer part of the peritoneum that your digestive organs are suspended in. You also want to know what it means for something to be retroperitoneal. As the slide says here, that means something is posterior to the peritoneum. So what you have right here is whatever organ has now migrated behind the peritoneum, so it's attached to the dorsal body wall or the dorsal wall of your abdominal cavity with the peritoneum now in front of it. There are a couple organs that you should just be aware are retroperitoneal. Your kidneys are retroperitoneal, your pancreas is retroperitoneal, as is your duodenum. It actually dives back behind the peritoneum and then pops back out to meet up with the rest of the intestine. So this next topic is, specifically, it's not just blood supply, but you want to be aware of the hepatic portal circulation, which is a bit of the blood that we haven't covered yet, or we didn't cover when we did the blood vessels. So the hepatic portal circulation takes all of the blood from the spleen and your digestive tract and dumps it into the liver. So it's connecting capillaries in the digestive tract with capillaries in the liver, which is why we call it the portal circulation. And what you need to know is that it is the splenic, gastric, and mesenteric veins that merge to form the hepatic portal vein, and then the hepatic portal vein dumps the blood into the liver. So if you look here, here's mesenteric, gastric, they're splenic and gastric veins all form to merge the hepatic portal vein, which then dumps the blood into the liver. The liver is going to do its processing or filtration of the blood, and then it is going to be drained by the hepatic veins, which then dump the blood into the inferior vena cava. Salivary glands, for whatever reason, we don't cover in the lab, so you just want to know that the parotid, the submandibular, and the sublingual are all examples of salivary glands. You will not have to identify them either in lecture or in lab because we just don't have very good pictures of them. So the last thing you want to know, the last little part of this screencast, is just to know what is in the saliva. So it's got electrolytes, as most of your bodily secretions do, and then it has some amylase, which is going to begin starch digestion, some lipase, which will begin fat digestion. It has lysozyme, which is an enzyme to help kill bacteria, so it helps keep your mouth and digestive tract clean, and then some antibodies and defensins I won't ask you about, but no amylase, lipase, lysozyme, and antibodies. And that is the intro to the digestive system.